Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, to join us today to the first webinar of the series of webinars from the e-MFP Action Group Green, Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance. And today we have with us Catalina Martinez, PhD from the University of Geneva and Geneva Finance Research Institute. She will share with us the results of the paper developed together with Professor Dr. Bernd Balkenhol, who is a renowned expert in the field of microfinance. And this study, it's very interesting. I will give an introduction. The off-grid solar energy is instrumental to achieve access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all, namely the SDG 7. And more than half of the progress has been made in the last decade towards this SDG 7, thanks to innovative startups in the sector. But the global crisis brought by the coronavirus disease can reduce the customer's ability to pay, disrupt the value chains, and freeze capital flows into the sector. So Catalina will show with us the results of the study they conducted, providing an overview of the collective intelligence of the sector, aiming to guide the stakeholders. I'll also introduce the action group. So if you can go next, Catalina. The Green, Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group was launched in February in 2013, and it is a unique multi-stakeholder think tank for environmentally responsible and inclusive finance, and it is hosted by the European Microfinance Platform. We have over 60 members, and they have different levels of engagement, representing more than 40 institutions. Also, we have individual members. And together with Davide Porcella from Yabo Solutions and CERMI, we are the directors and heads of this action group. My name is Natalia Real Pecarrillo. I am the CEO of EDERA and also cluster fellow from the Institute of Advanced Sustainability Studies, Potsdam. If you want to join us, you are welcome to join. Just write to Joanna Afonso from the European Microfinance Platform. Here is her email. And more about us, I want to share with you the achievements that we have got so far. We have developed the Green Index, which is a standard for environmental performance assessment. We have developed also a series of catalogs of green energy products led by Microenergy International. We have conducted more than 7 events, 2 scientific committees, or 40 presentations and trainings in green microfinance. We have an e-learning platform and also publications. And our objectives, as well as this webinar represents, is to discuss the challenges and strategies to enhance the knowledge, action, cooperation, and commitment among stakeholders, to develop dedicated tools for the green microfinance sector, and to publish and disseminate these findings, which is what we are doing today. Our ongoing activities currently is developing the environmental dimension of the universal standards with SPTF, dimension number 7. We are developing also the Green Index 3.0, which will be the same as this dimension 7. Also, we will have soon an online library of all material of green microfinance, and we will have recurrent publications of state of the sector and newsletters. We will have benchmarks, monitoring, strategic suggestions, and IT solutions for you, all the stakeholders that play a role in the green microfinance sector. And last but not least, also this webinar series, which we are very happy to launch with you, Catalina.
Thank you very much.
Let's go next. This is the first one, as I told you, and everyone is invited to participate. You just have to contact us. There are 2 options, one of 45 minutes and another one very brief, just to share highlights of 15 minutes. And you can contact us whether through Joanna or directly to Davide or me. The next webinar will be in December 17th with Philippe Guichandou from Foundation Grameen Crédit Agricole. And this, I give now the virtual floor to Catalina. We will open questions after 25 minutes. It means at 16:30. And if you will have questions while she is presenting, you can post them in the chat. We will then open the floor for questions. So you can start, Catalina.
So thank you very much, Natalia, and everybody at the Climate Action Group. It's a really good pleasure to be here today, and I am very much looking forward to the discussion at the end of the presentation. So as Natalia said, this is a paper that I wrote together with Professor Bernd Bankenhol at the University of Geneva. I'm just going to give you a bit of background on our study. It was funded by the Sustainable Finance Project, a green microfinance project of the Swiss National Science Foundation and National Research Project on Sustainable Economy. The focus initially was to try to understand how to scale investments into solar energy for off-grid populations. But then, COVID started and we realized that we had to adjust our study design because we were not really going to be able to go to the field and do surveys as we had anticipated. And that it would be really valuable to the field to have, academics like us to provide a neutral point of view of what is really going on in the field in the long term. A lot of studies have done on the short term, have focused on the short term reactions of key stakeholders to try to help the sector, but few have really tried to understand what COVID is going to mean in the long term. So we decided to focus on that and to do a qualitative study to really try to understand what is the effect that the crisis is going to have in the sector of solar energy access for off-grid populations in the long term in developing countries. So with that background, let me just go into the topic. As Natalia was telling us, off-grid solar energy is key to achieve SDG 7, affordable and clean energy. There is a lot of progress that has been made already, but a lot of people are still in the dark. We had 840 million people. Most of them are in Africa. Most of them are in rural populations. So we need to find solutions to reach them. And we know that energy access has multiplier effects across many other SDGs. So pay-as-you-go businesses, PAG as you have them here, are key to achieve the SDGs. We know that around 180 million products of off-grid solar energy have been sold in the last decade, and that they have reached about 420 million people since 2010. So these type of products have been really key in reducing the number of people that are out of reach of energy access. And they have attracted also a lot of investments, a lot of impact investors, and also development finance institutions are interested in these pay-as-you-go businesses because of their model. So basically, for those of you who are not familiar, how it works is that pay-as-you-go businesses provide a solar energy. Usually there are solar home systems to rural families, and these solar home systems that, or also just lanterns, are tied to a remote lockout technology that will lock if the payment of the let's say of the leasing of these products is not done as regularly as it should. So basically the household receive the equipment, they have to do regular payments, they are often collected through mobile money. If they do the payments as regularly and as required, then they are have access to these equipments being available to them. If they don't do the payments, then they are locked out remotely. And basically, this allows to bring energy through this pay-as-you-go business model to many people that don't have any credit scoring or that wouldn't have access to microfinance to buy other types of energy access equipment. So for that reason, it has attracted a lot of investment and attention, and around 85% of all solar investments go to pay-as-you-go businesses. So the question that we are trying to address in the paper is that if COVID-19 will stop all the progress that this sector has done. As I was telling you before, there are a lot of studies that have tried to understand what has been the short-term impact on the clients of these services and or the products. Also the short-term impact on the companies and the short-term impact on the investors. And of course, they mobilized a lot of different resources, for example, server, phone, and different things, and they add a lot of value. We wanted to address a different question, and it's more about the long-term impacts, how things are going to be changed even after all these crisis is contained. Basically, what are the expected challenges that may persist even if after all the containment measures are lifted in the markets of interest. um, it is really hard to quantify these impacts today, but we think that the qualitative insights of the stakeholders in this sector can be very valuable for many other stakeholders to really, see what are the different scenarios, why some of them are for some people more likely than others, and try to use this collective intelligence for the benefit of all the people that are still in the dark. So that's what we try to do in our paper. The paper, by the way, is publicly available in SSRN. Okay, so the methodology that we use is we do in-depth interviews of key industry stakeholders. We have done these interviews between March and June 2020, and we interviewed 20 key experts at the very senior levels in these organizations. We have asset managers of impact investing firms like Bamboo, Blue Orchard, Lend a Hand, Responsability, Santander, and Venture South, some key DFIs, some companies that provide this pay-as-you-go business model, but also others that focus, for example, in water pumps like Lawrence and Sun Culture, and other key stakeholders in the sector that provide different services, consultancies, different services that are key for the ecosystem. So what we did is that we proposed 10 hypotheses for these stakeholders on the effects that we expect can be likely to be materialized in the long term in the sector. We divided the 10 hypotheses in 3 groups. The first one is around customers, the second one is around companies, and the third one is around investors. Here I am already giving you a peek view on the results with these lights that we have on the right. But basically the hypotheses are, for example, in the customer side, we expect that there are going to be reduced incomes, expenditures, and ability to pay. And then you start to see how many people agree with this hypothesis and how many disagree. So let me just go into the hypothesis and some of the quotes that we have selected as representative to give you a sense of the results of the paper. Again, it's a very qualitative paper. We just selected a couple of quotes from our interviews. Our interviewees were able to review them, to adjust them. So really, we are trying to be very open and qualitative about this study, hoping that we are collecting collective intelligence that is useful for the sector. So here in the first hypothesis, reduced incomes, expenditures, and ability to pay of the customers, as I told you, there is both agreement with this hypothesis and disagreement. So, from the agreement side, we know that a lot of stakeholders were already worried about the sustainability, financial sustainability of the sector, because they were saying that many companies, even if they have this business model that is very attractive, many of them were not really profitable. Only a couple or maybe 3 were achieving profitability levels that were, starting to appear in the last couple of years. So the sector per se cannot really afford their customers not being able to repay and facing long-term shocks in their income streams. So some people are very worried about this. Other people say that anyway, the OGS, so off-grid solar energy companies, are moving to higher end company customers and are providing bigger systems, bigger solar home systems. So they are not so concerned about the lower income population getting lower expenditure and ability to pay and getting lower incomes, because they think that these OGS companies are moving to this higher end market that still is underserved and that there is still an opportunity to serve that market. So again, here is interesting to see like the two different points of views. The second hypothesis that we had was a bit not so supported by the interviewees, so we just skipped it and went to the others just for the sake of time. So let's just go to the third one, which is about demand side market distortions. What we think here is that since low-income populations are going to be disproportionately affected by the crisis, then it's likely that you are going to have from the government support to get access to energy, and this can generate distortions that can be persistent over time. Most of the interviewees agree with this. They say that some sort of support is expected, and that maybe this is an opportunity to have this conversation with the government and saying, instead of really subsidizing grid connection, you should try to focus on subsidizing off-grid connection that can be most cost effective. So basically, there was a lot of agreement on that demand side subsidies, providing aid to customers per se to achieve energy access through solar off-grid solutions. Now, going to the company's hypothesis, the first one was that we thought that COVID was going to bring long-lasting operational disruptions and industry reorganization. So this is a bit of a complex hypothesis. Let's focus on the first part, which is on the operational disruption. So these companies operate with agents. The distribution model is through agents, and yeah, basically here what we were thinking is that it's going to be more difficult because of the crisis to maintain that agent distribution model alive, and also to keep the agents that you have to maybe put on hold for a couple of months due to COVID, to keep them engaged in the company. So here again, there is agreement and disagreement. Some people say, there is a new normal, the business is just going to go down and companies will have to downscale and adjust to that. Other interviewees say, anyway, agents that go door to door were becoming less important over time. Maybe this is an opportunity to explore digital distribution channels. So that's also interesting to explore, like these different points of view. The second part of this hypothesis goes more into the industry reorganization. So in the last years, this industry has specialized a lot in the different segments of the value chain. So you have some players that are focused on the financing, other players are focused more on the production of the solar panels, others on the assembly. So this specialization has brought down costs and has brought higher efficiencies. But since there are still some vertically integrated players that are the biggest and they are the ones that attract the highest capital, we are thinking that COVID may disproportionately affect the smaller players that are specialized. So this is an interesting hypothesis because here you have strong arguments for both sides. Some people say it is going to be, oh, sorry, I'm talking about the wrong hypothesis. So let me just go to that one and I go back. So I'm talking about specialization versus vertical integration. So some people say, rather than consolidating into these vertically integrated players, maybe there's just going to be a sector contraction. And yes, there are going to be fewer players, but overall, not necessarily. Some people say, yes, we're going to specialize, but fewer players along the value chain. So still, we keep the specialization. We don't go vertically integrated, but we have fewer players. Other people say, no, COVID will shake the industry, but anyway, like the business rationale for specializing is still going to be there. So the challenges are going to be the same. We are going to keep specializing, but maybe fewer, the most successful fewer actors will remain. Sorry, I'll just go back to the previous one that I got confused. Here we are talking about the imports of the companies. So most of these companies rely on Chinese suppliers. And at the beginning of the COVID crisis, they were facing problems in stocks. So they didn't have enough access to products to sell. After China became more stable, then that problem was solved, but still they had problems in being able to ship by air in in good condition. So basically, a lot of the shippings were booked for emergency merchandise, and it was really hard to keep that flow of products. So in that sense, some people say that as long as that, let's say, emergency mode fades away, then the shipping problem is going to fade away as well. And China has already come back and is more stable than the other countries, so they don't expect that this is going to really change this sourcing from Chinese producers of solar panels. Some agree that this crisis has made the realization that many companies just didn't have good risk management practices. So in that sense, it's going to be shaking them more because they were struggling to make basic risk assessments, and they cannot really wait so long as to when all this emergency mode is finished, basically. So I realize I don't have a lot of time left. Natalia, do I have 10 minutes or 5?
Yes, so we have 16:23. You have 7 minutes.
Okay, so let me just
for more hypotheses, right?
Yes. So let me just quickly go to the investor side, which I think is going to be interesting. And then we can, if there are questions about the other hypothesis, we can go. So basically, the first hypothesis is we think that there are going to be fewer investors with lower risk appetite. The sector was risky per se. Now this is an additional layer of risk. And at some point, there are going to be more trade-offs between the social impact objectives and the commercial objectives. What we have found from our interviewees is that some agree in the sense that yes, investors were already cautious about the sectors. I was telling you before, many companies were not profitable, and this is just going to reduce their appetite for the sector. Others disagree and think that there is still such a great need for electricity, and still the business model is attractive. So, and still there are diversification potential in the sense that this is an attractive investment opportunity in a part of the world that is still very diversified. Let's say it offers a diversification with respect to other parts of the world where you usually would invest. So they still think that this is a very attractive sector. But most of them also think that at some point, if the crisis keeps going and the companies keep struggling, then the investors are going to have to make a more commercial decision. In a way, this is going to be mitigated by the fact that a lot of investors already have sunk costs, in the sense that they have already invested in a lot of the companies and want to help them as much as possible to weather the crisis. So the other hypothesis for the investors' side is that we expect a higher complexity of the risks and a lower ability of the existing instruments to address that complexity. So just to give you some clarification, here one of the biggest risks is foreign exchange risk. And the pressure on, we expect that it's going to be increased by COVID, making currency hedging more expensive, precisely when it's more needed. And we know already that many of the companies were not hedging their loans. So they were borrowing in dollars or in euros, and they were receiving their cash flows in local currencies. So we expect that this risk is going to be bigger. Now, a lot of investors were proposing different solutions to try to pool risk and manage it better. For example, securitization, and trying to standardize the investments that are being done with securitization. But again, this is something that is very complex for companies to manage. And now that they have to deal with other risks, it may be even harder. Here you have people that agree and disagree. of course, the people that have strongly invested on securitization and believe that it's the next frontier for the sector, believe that this rationale is still going to be there even after COVID fades away. Others agree that it's going to be harder to manage, especially on the foreign exchange risk side. So the last hypothesis is on blended finance and competition vis-a-vis other sectors. So as we said in the previous hypothesis, we expect that commercial capital is going to be even fewer than it currently is, or that it was before of the crisis. So the importance of blended finance and catalytic capital is going to be bigger. But this brings also the fact that donors may be focusing on other sectors that are not necessarily energy focused or solar energy focused. Maybe health is going to be in their priority. So this is going to probably make the sector have to compete with other types of investments. So here again, agreement and disagreement. But in a sense, everybody is very aware that energy is sort of a precondition also for good health provision, and that there is a big potential for collaboration and highlighting the role of energy in providing a multiplier effect and providing access to other services that are key for the population. So just to go again to the snapshot of the results, as you see, there is a bit of disagreement all over the place, but it gives you a little bit of guidance of where some key actors stand. I think the richness of the study is very interesting because we have tried to capture a lot of different perspectives, and the insights that you get from the quotes and from the qualitative the qualitative nature of the study is interesting. So I will encourage you to read it and just to get back to us with any suggestion and any question. I hope that you find it interesting, that it can help you in any way that you are facing the crisis in this sector. It is very premature still to predict the effects. That's why we try to make it very qualitative and open to different scenarios and trying to give a voice to different perspectives. We hope that our work is serving as some guidance. We didn't include anything around the regulations and policies. We were focusing only on the customers, the companies, and the investors. Future work would also look into this side of how the regulations and policies could be affected by the pandemic. So thank you so much for your attention, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Catalina. It was very punctual. We have 16:30, and now the floor is open to questions. We have also here with us Professor Bernd Balkenhol in the attendees. So also you have the opportunity to ask directly to both authors your questions. Anybody? We can also change the modality of the Zoom so that we can see each other, the faces, if you like, so that we can have this live discussion. And I see as well that we have some research, some audience from the research, from the academia. Maybe Catalina, what you could tell us if there are open questions that you will say, what will be the next step after this study? What are hypotheses that were not yet posed, or in this you didn't have the opportunity, and that could be an opportunity for students and researchers that are joining us today, or that we'll see in the future the recording?
Yeah, so another hypothesis that we didn't really look into was that some of these solar off-grid energy providers have been saying that one of the keys for making the sector more financially sustainable is to provide income generating solutions. So for example, solar water pumps or other solutions that increase the income of customers so that it is more viable that they are going to repay and all of that. So that's one of the areas where we thought that it would be interesting to do some follow-up studies. Many of our interviewees said, you know, again here both yes and no. Like a lot of the interviewees said, this is not the time to develop new technologies, but others said this is the time to really invest into something that truly adds value to the customer, that truly increases the income.
Okay.
We have a question?
I have noted that one also to share it within the action group and also for students. And we have here one question from Rick. To the European Microfinance Platform, can we change the modality of the Zoom so that we can see all the participants if possible? So I can read also the question. If you wanted a critical review of this hypothesis, who would you need to involve? Now it seems a bit of an echo chamber of those already involved with Offgrid Solar.
Yeah, so that's you know, we are open to suggestions. This is a working paper. We would like to go into the next step. So we see this webinar as an opportunity to get feedback. So you are most than welcome to tell us what do you think we could do in that sense. Again, the study was very qualitative. It was trying to respond to a need that we saw, but of course that comes into expense of making it as objective as possible. There are biases, of course, in the methodology. So any suggestions are open. We are open.
Thank you, Rick, also for your participation. I understand also that there was an original idea of the study, and then it evolved to this.
Yes.
That introduction due to the pandemic, and also that you had access to all these stakeholders to gather the information, right?
Yeah. Initially, we wanted to focus on only trying to understand how to scale the investments into this sector. And trying to understand how to help impact investors based in Switzerland and in Geneva do so. And so we were planning to do surveys at the customer level, like more traditional research study. But at the end, we decided to go for a more practical one, given the situation.
Okay, so do you share the notion that subsidies wouldn't distort the market? That was one of the remarks.
No, maybe I didn't explain that correctly. So the hypothesis is that they will distort the market, but some interviewees agree with the likelihood of that happening and some disagree. So in the sense of subsidies for the customers, most of them agree. Subsidies for the companies, most of them disagree that they are going to take place, basically. But everybody agrees that subsidies distort the market.
Catalina and Professor Balkenhol, did you have some unexpected results from the hypothesis that you posed and the comments? And my other question would is if when you shared your insights to the interviewers, did you receive feedback? And no, I think this is very valuable to see, you know, from as a stakeholder, to see what the others, my peers, think about the same situation. Did you receive a specific feedback that was interesting for you?
Bernd, would you like to take that one? I'm not sure if I can go ahead. So if we were surprised, I would say like it was a learning very, very strong. Oh, Bernd, there you are.
Mm-hmm. We can see you.
we cannot hear you yet. Just
because I haven't said anything yet. So
okay.
No, I mean, Natalia, you asked the question, what any unexpected result? I was a bit surprised by the generally cool and unexcited perception of investors and promoters of solar energy as far as the income effects are concerned. I mean, they seem to be thinking, well, it is it's a little bit like a normal crisis. It's not going to last very long. These people, the clients who can afford off-grid solar energy, they are not the poorest of the poor. They will have reserves. There may be some disruption, but on the whole, it is not, so they said, it is not too dramatic. So that was something that sort of coming basically from the microfinance field proper, you would not expect, because there is a lot more drama going on, or at least that's what I perceive, as far as income losses and income instability and asset destruction as a result of a drawn out crisis, pandemic crisis. So that was in response to your first question. So for me, that was a little bit a surprise. I don't know, Catalina, you had something else?
No, I think probably that one. Yeah, again, some people also. It's very related to that, like saying, no, this is still a very big market. There is still a lot of potential. We are still going to invest in it. I would say like the fact that you find people on the opposite sides for most of the hypotheses. You find people that are very positive, others that are very pessimistic. It's hard to find somebody that has a balanced view, I would say. But at the same time, like everybody brings something very different. We learned many different insights from people. So that made me realize like it's a very rich sector that you cannot really quantify that, It's interesting to interview people and see their perspectives in that sense.
Yeah. And we have here another question, and is can we state that pay-as-you-go is an ethical and inclusive financial approach? And can we consider it impact finance?
I'll take the ethical thing. You take the impact investing angle of it.
Okay.
Well, I can see where you're coming from. I don't know who put the question. Anonymous. Okay, I can see where that comes from, because the lockout technology, i.e. the sort of the decision to switch off an electricity supply, the supply of lighting at home, all of a sudden, because you are behind in your in the payment of your installments, and that can be perceived as a little bit drastic and dramatic and not very inclusive. On the other hand, when you look at the growth figures and compare, let's say, the few microfinance institutions that have in the past experimented with specific energy loans, and you compare that growth performance of this type of portfolio with what you're seeing in PAYGOs, it is quite obvious that the basically a micro leasing model that is PAYGO is probably more appropriate for allowing a rapidly growing portfolio of clients. Something that we originally, in fact, wanted to explore. Why is it that before COVID, that microfinance institutions don't really attract more clients with their solar energy loans? That's an experiment in a few cases, but it hasn't really been scaled up. And originally, that's what we wanted to explore. We wanted to find out, why is it that not more than a few thousand people in any given country are acquiring micro energy loans from specialized microfinance institutions? Now, we couldn't do that. We couldn't do that because we couldn't go, as we had planned to do, on the ground and do household service and do service of solar energy providers and companies. So that's why we basically had to abandon that. And, maybe in response perhaps to a question, Natalia, what is the future of this? I would very much hope that once the crisis is over, that someone else, or us, or the consortium, or perhaps the action group, takes this up once the situation has reverted to normal and do really a critical analysis of the constraints to scaling up in this sector. And there's still, that still needs to be done.
So, Professor Balkenhol, so you will say also that I see also here Sam Mendelssohn and more people from e-MFP. No, we just came back from the European Microfinance Week, where we saw and we were amazed by the collaboration of investors towards microfinance institutions during the pandemic, and we celebrated that that sense of collaboration and support of each other. Did you see the same in the energy sector? And do investors play a role in whether supporting microfinance institutions or off-grid solar suppliers? Would you say there's some relations there? Maybe also Sam would like to say something.
I would agree that you have something similar also in this field, which is not that far removed from microfinance proper, or the core business, if you like, of microfinance. We're still talking here about the financial inclusion space.
Yes.
And the voluntary agreement that we saw, I don't know which month exactly, but it was at the beginning of the year, of the major impact investors, sort of a commitment to facilitate the financial survival of their of the companies in their portfolio, in their respective portfolios. I think that applies also to off-grid solar energy providers. Maybe Catalina, do you want to throw in?
No, I think you covered it. Thank you.
Or Sam, now I think that you got their permission to talk. Yes. Not sure if your microphone is still muted. Just in case you want to add it from your discussion with Frederick from the European Microfinance Week. Okay, so I think so that I think the last was you mentioned, Professor Balkenhol, about the role of the action group, and also from the European Microfinance Platform. We are developing tools, we will be developing materials, further conducting this type of webinars for the sector, but I see that there is also still a disconnection between the energy sector and the microfinance, and only now we have this comment from the investors. What other support would microfinance institutions need from our side, or that you will say more than conducting this research, or which platforms could work in order to support them in financing solar energy?
I mean, as Catalina said, the business model in this particular sort of field, i.e. small-scale financial services to allow access to energy. You can call that specialized microfinance products, or you can call it pay-goes, or you can call that a hybrid, a combined form of both. You don't have a single strategy that would really impose itself. What we probably simply need to do is, and here I'm repeating myself, go back to the constraining factors that make it still extremely difficult and unaffordable for low-income households to have a secure and a stable supply of energy, which would help achieve a number of other sustainable development goals. So the focus on the causes of what constrains scaling up, that for me is the next priority. regardless of whether we're talking about microfinance institutions that specialize and sort of innovate and come out with all kinds of new financial products, which is probably less likely to happen. They're going to withdraw in the next couple of years, probably more on their core business. Or whether you're talking about pay-goes and you've seen the different business models within pay-goes that try to go down market, that, you know, it's open to question.
Maybe something to add there also is that, you know, many pay-goes are going beyond just the pay-go business to use the data that they are collecting from their customers, which is very unique, and these are very rural and far reaching, you know, really hard to reach customers, use their data to create loans and create insurance. And so my perception is that many pay-goes don't really see the potential for collaboration with microfinance institutions. They see them more like as competitors, and also microfinance institutions may not be so interested in going to these very marginalized populations in very rural areas with something that is very technical and they don't really understand. So like that was one of the things that we gathered from our interviews, was that there is not that much sense of collaboration. And also with the crisis, probably as Bernd said, maybe it's going to be even harder to look into further areas of R&D for microfinance institutions and pay-goes.
It is a pity that I think we don't have from PAMIGA, from CIDR PAMIGA, who just published also, not last semester, a report on how they see the relationship between pay-goes and microfinance institutions, to provide some insights. But I think we will have opportunity also for our next webinar. And we planned here until 4:45, but we have a last question. If you would like to stay, and if we can, according to Zoom, maybe we can go for it, right?
Yes.
So Anonymous.
We need to stop at 5, sorry, but yeah.
Yes.
We have time.
At a general market and value chain level, how are off-grid systems promoted by financial institutions sustainable? Repairability, technical post-sale assistance, warranty schemes are what allow us to ensure quality, durability, and therefore reduce negative impacts.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Where is the sector in your opinion?
I think, I mean, we didn't really focus on that. So I wouldn't, you know, my sense, I don't know, Bernd, but my sense is that the recycling and the whole value, like life cycle of the products, is something that needs a lot of improvement. We were in Gogla in the conference that this sector has in February in Nairobi. We were there, and I could see a lot of companies that were offering that service, but that seems to be something very new. And you know, as we said, like most of the companies are just focusing on surviving. So recycling is not top of their mind. But again, this is not the focus of our study. So just take my opinion with a pinch of salt. But basically, I think, yes, that's a really important question to think about, the whole life cycle of the products.
Yeah. Yeah, it is not specifically very new. Like from last year, there has been already some awareness raising on this topic of waste management over a couple of years, but there has not been yet like a common action or like a regulation on how should this be treated sector-wise. And we have a last question. Oh, okay.
That's a good question.
Yeah, so there is anonymous went non-anonymous. Thank you, Matza from Microfinanza. Which hypothesis is more likely and that we should rely on for our scenario analysis as investors? Katen.
I think that you should read the paper and choose yourself. I wouldn't.
share the link to the paper. I will
Yes.
to
Let me
everybody.
just, yes. What do you think, Bernd?
That was a very good answer.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yes, here is the link to the paper. You can download it or read it directly in as PDF in the browser.
Did you send it or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
No, I mean, I don't want to end this with a sort of facetious note. The question is very justified and important. Uh, it, which one of those? I think we formulated these 9 or 10 hypotheses, basically leaning back and thinking about the three major actors in this financial inclusion space, in this very specific financial inclusion space. And we thought, okay, these are hypotheses that we consider as most realistic, as most plausible. But you can still see in the distribution between confirm and reject that even amongst people who are exactly in the same line of business, i.e. investors or operators or general promoters or policy advice makers, there is not just one particular opinion. I would a little suggestion, an idea for help you interpret the paper and the findings is you just have to look at the institution for which a particular individual speaks. There are not that many. There are 20 or 25 or so. And some of the institutions they have really a very in-depth practical experience in driving up portfolios of very small access to finance, access to energy loans and other financial products. And these institutions, somebody who speaks from that institution, I would generally give a little bit more higher coefficient of credibility than someone who is, let's say, a general promoter. And we've got in our list of respondents also some of those. So, it's your personal choice, but I think the complexity is simply illustrated. The complexity of the issues is illustrated by the very broad range of positions on every single hypothesis. There's not one that sort of has everyone agreeing in one direction, which probably speaks for the hypothesis. But anyway, okay, I stop here.
I think it is a good way to close. An invitation to read the paper. And Catalina, if you can share again the last slide. If you have any questions, here Catalina can share her email so that you can write her. And also, if you want to join to further webinars or to participate, feel welcome to contact us. Also, if you want to join to the action group and get to know about our activities, you can contact Joanna or Davide and me. Thank you very much for attending today to our webinar. We had over 25 participants, and we will see you next 17th of December, also Thursday, to listen to Fondation Grameen Crédit Agricole, Philippe Guichandou. Have a nice evening, and thank you, Catalina and Professor Balkenhol, for participating and sharing with us your results.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Next publications.
Thank you.
The pleasure.
Goodbye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
And start from Joanna for hosting. I'll stay
Thanks.
until
Bye-bye.
everybody leaves.